I have to ask on camera, do you consent to being recorded?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Then great, let's get started. Hi, my name is Destiny Melendez, as I said in the email. For my race, ethnicity, and gender and sexuality course, we were asked to contact an organization that we felt was really trying to teach to power and help improve Texas in general. And I chose your organization, which was MAS for Texas Schools. So you want to introduce yourself real quick and give like a brief description of your organization?
Sure. My name is Christopher Carmona. I am the chair of this committee, or the organization. We started off in the National Association of Chicana and Chicano Studies Tejas Foco, which is under the committee of the Mexican American Studies and Pre-K through 12 education here in Texas. The MAS for Texas organization is an organization to promote the teaching of Mexican American Studies and other ethnic studies in Texas, primarily Mexican American Studies. And in the K through 12 or pre-K through 12 education for the past, what are we on, 7 years now? Well, yes, for the past 7 years, we've been, well, we're going to have our 7th summit this summer. We've held summits where we bring teachers and educators and others, and even community organizations together to discuss how to implement, share, practices on how they teach them in the classes, how they teach Mexican American Studies, or how they implement it. And we host different types of workshops. We worked with the MAS Teachers Academy in San Antonio, Houston, all over the state. And we also work with, keeping track and helping teachers who want to teach these courses in their classrooms around the state. And we've been doing this about 7 years now.
That's awesome. Okay. So speaking, you mentioned you guys do summits regularly. I actually watched the one that was recently uploaded from 2020. And there I believe you just mentioned that being in an elementary school and your principal calling in your parents to come speak to them and complain about you only being able to speak Spanish. And from that moment, they gave you, from that moment on, they only spoke to you in English after that. Would you say that was your first time that you ever, I guess, got that wake-up call that you realized, oh, these schools are not really teaching, expanding my education. They're, I guess, restricting me, they're forcing me into assimilation, or is there any other particular moment where that realization hit you?
Well, at the time, obviously not, right? I was young. I didn't really know what was going on. And, especially like parents are just trying to protect their children. And I'm sure my parents understood what was happening at the time, but they were not going to relay that as a young age. That really came to my realization much later in life. But I think that, there are different moments that throughout the history, throughout like all the education, where you see things like that, but you don't register that. It doesn't register automatically because we're not taught to look for it, right? One of the major things that also is that I did not, get this type of ethnic studies or this critical race theory, any of this training until I was in graduate school. So I went through all of K through 12 and even through my bachelor's without really getting this type of training, or to understand how to look at this world and look at everything we're learning differently. So by that time I was already older, right? And so that was kind of the drive to bring this stuff into the K through 12, because if I was, I always think if I was able to get this information at a younger age, how different would my choices in life have been, right? The career paths and everything. And, we just did not have those opportunities. And so that's the reason why I got into this work.
Yeah, I mentioned that because I also went through something similar in my kindergarten experience. I only spoke Spanish at the time. And I remember my kindergarten teacher, she spoke Spanish as well, but she specifically told me I couldn't, continue to speak Spanish. I needed to learn English if I wanted to be, I guess, the top of my class. So I had plenty of those moments that of realization too, but like you said, they didn't really hit until higher education.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I noticed also when I did reach like college level UTSA is during my freshman year here at UTSA, I registered for a Mexican American Literatures course
Mm-hmm.
in the fall semester, and then came spring semester, and we were never told who our professor was until the day of. So it
Mm-hmm.
was class started, and in came this elderly white American woman, and she was, I guess, given to us to teach Mexican American literature. And I feel bad for saying this, right? Because she was really nice and she seemed very passionate about the topic, but it just didn't feel right. It didn't, I felt
Mm-hmm.
disappointed because the semester before I had taken an intro to mass course with Dr. Cervantes. I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh
him.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
it was great. I never felt really more connected to a professor and someone who really resonated with what he taught.
Yeah.
And I was thinking if even in like higher education where ethnic studies are supposed to be, I guess, normal now, or like not normal, but more implemented, more accepted, even if
Mm-hmm.
in like this type of education, they are not a priority. How can we get like for them, for like public schools in Texas to prioritize mass courses and other ethnic studies courses?
Yeah. No, I mean, definitely there's a lot of that that's, unfortunately still in play. And it's not to say that white people can't teach this stuff, but we're in a point in time right now where representation is just as important. And that shows to the lack of hiring of faculty of color in these universities still. I mean, UTSA is same thing down here in UTRGV, but as a very majority Latino student population, right?
Yeah.
And yet your professors, I'm not sure what the breakdown is there, are probably majority white, right?
Mhm.
This is not a unique thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you down here at UTRGV where we have our Latino population somewhere in the upper 90s, like 90%, right?
Mhm.
Um, the faculty are still 70% white.
Yeah.
So you don't have representation as you should. Like you connected with Marcos because um, he came from the same place you did, right? He's
Mhm.
able to connect with you in a different way that someone who does not have that same experience would not know how to relate this information. And I think that Denzel Washington said this best when he was talking about why we need more Black directors and things like this, and why Black director would be different in directing subject matter that was definitely for the Black community. So it's not so much a race thing as it is a cultural thing. That someone who is African American would understand the cultural differences that will be able to show up in the details of the film that a white director could never understand. And that translates differently. And that's the same thing here. When you have someone from your own perspective, your own culture, you're able to that person is able to understand cultural differences and cultural insights that the students can pick up on and understand that you cannot get with a white professor. It's just the way it is. It's a cultural thing. And so yes, the representation does matter.
Yeah. I even thought this that that was the first class that I ever actually enjoyed writing an essay because
Mm-hmm.
it got to do with something that I was familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So on the topic of teachers, it is like you said, representation matters, and for the teachers to be able to resonate with the students and the material that they teach. Um, so could you elaborate, I guess, on what some of the requirements that teachers will need to fulfill in order to be able, and the type of training they will need in order to be able to like teach these courses properly?
Um, so in a public school system, it's a bit different than actually in a university setup. So for public school teachers, all you really need to do to teach these classes is to be certified in these subject areas, correct? And then the principal assigns the person. That's not usually how it happens. What usually happens is you have teachers that are passionate about the subject and they will approach their principals about having the class and they'll set it up that way. That is the path that it usually is. But the difference now is that now because the Mexican American Studies course is now on the books as a TEKS-based course in Texas, you have these different districts who are starting to assign people. So there's not really a criteria set up. Like you don't have to be certified in Mexican American studies to teach in Mexican American studies in the public school system. It's not there. But a lot of schools and things are not, they're going to try to find someone who does have the training in this area, someone who's passionate about it. And usually those end up being those who are either double majored in Mexican American studies or have certificates and things of that nature. And those are the people that they'll seek out. But as of right now, there are no standardized criteria for teaching these courses in the public school system, sadly. And that is, but it's a good thing and a bad thing, because the good thing is therefore a lot of the teachers who teach it now can utilize their, because a lot of the people who teach it now did not have Mexican American studies degrees and things of that nature, because those didn't exist for us a lot back in the day. A lot of this has come through our own research and work. But at the same time, the bad thing is that you don't have, they can really assign anybody to teach these courses. And so that's the kind of where we kind of step in and try to work with these teachers and people who want to teach them, and also these districts, to make sure that, we're getting the right people teaching these courses. So that is something that as an organization that we try to do as well.
Yeah. And what's it called? You mentioned that anyone could teach this, and that's actually proven. As I did look into how much, like, who gets hired as teachers in Texas. And according to the Association of Texas School Boards, white teachers make up a total of 80% of the teaching jobs in Texas, while the other races are much smaller, with Hispanics being at only 8.8%. As for the rest of the ethnic groups, it's smaller. I don't think they even had statistics. So I guess if we do succeed in, implementing mass courses in public schools, how can we push for the right people to be hired? So if, like you said, anyone can teach these courses.
That has to happen at the school board level. The local school boards have to be pushed, like the way that they're doing right now from the other side with this anti-critical race theory campaign that they have going. They're pushing at the school board level. And so this is why that's why you're seeing all these videos of people at these school board meetings and stuff like that. But in Texas, primarily, it is a local control issue. The Republicans usually run on this idea of local control over state control or federal control. And so by what that means then is that the districts have total autonomy in what happens in their districts. And that's something that we've used for our advantage in getting our courses into these schools. And it's something that they can't really get rid of the same way, because it would go against their basic principles of not having interference in local control. So that has to be done at a grassroots level. That has to be pushed at the school boards, pushed at the superintendent level, at the principal level. The parents have a lot of power. And that means organizing the parents and people within their communities. And that's another thing that we get involved with as well. You got to push from that level. That's how you change things. And that's how you get the people you need, because the way it's set up in Texas is that it is about local control. So the districts have to say on what they teach in their districts. And then that goes down to principals and things of that nature.
Yeah. I like how you mentioned that parents should be the ones, pushing for this, to play a pivotal role in this. Because this actually reminded me, I did grow up with a bunch of not Mexican American teachers, especially in high school. But a lot of them were, I guess you would say, indifferent about this. A lot of them did resign their own identity and culture. I remember having this history teacher, and we would tell him, people would ask him where he's from, and though he is from Mexico, he would always say, I'm American, I'm an American citizen. He's an American first before everything. And so I guess my question is, how do we get people who are indifferent, or I guess don't care about putting mass organizations into school, to, I guess, see our side, see our perspective?
So a lot of what we did when we got this course made, it took us 5 years to get the course approved, is we basically bombarded them with facts and studies and statistics. And you keep on pushing that because that's something that cannot be argued. The fact that ethnic studies, then the studies about ethnic studies have shown that students who take these courses end up doing better overall and end up going to college. Student success is a key thing. And that's something, that's another one of the principles that they can't argue against. And so you gotta, they're political tactics in a lot of ways, but it's about, one of the things you gotta learn about doing this kind of work is it's all about controlling the narrative. And the Democrats are bad about controlling the narrative. They really are, because they fall into the trap. The Republicans are very good at it. That's why we have this critical race theory conversation happening, because nobody knows what's critical race theory. There's very few of us who know it. There's like 200 scholars who know what critical race theory means in this country, but they're using it. And then what happens is when they go to defend critical race theory, defend all the teaching, they fall into the trap where they start arguing about critical race theory. And that's the trap that they've laid, because they're controlling the narrative on that. So you got to change it. Change it from, you know, and the stats, the facts to student success. That's the thing, the language you need to do. So when you get indifference, we had to deal with majority Republican school board. There's only 4 Democrats on that board. So how did we do it to get them to a unanimous vote to approve this course, right? Yeah. It's a lot of that pushing. And a lot of pushing in multiple places. And you get people who were indifferent to start to hear the facts, right? Yeah. And that starts to change things. And so it's really about keep on being persistent with the information. Because a lot of these people grew up like a lot of us did without this information. And a lot of people go through colleges without ever thinking about race or culture as part of their education. There's a lot of that, and there's a lot of Latinos and Chicanos who go through that. And so you're going to get that. But what happens is after a while, because it becomes the conversation, they'll start to see it. It just takes time, and really, it's a tough thing. It took us 5 years to do this one class to get it approved, because we had to go through basically 15 different people who, you know, some of them were definitely opposed to it. Yeah. But it's about education. That's the key thing. And that means we got to educate at the grassroots level again. That's what we do too. The communities are always key here. Always.
That you did mention that the students who do take ethnic courses do tend to perform better. I actually read that on the website. I was wondering if you could direct me towards like this study or statistics where this information was tested or recalled, because this is important information, like you said, that we need to teach more people.
So you're on our website, the montsfortexas.org, Monts for Texas School. There's one that has a resource page, and on there it has all of the stats we use, or all the articles that you need to know to get at this information. So, let me find it real quick. Okay. Yeah, we have a page that has all of this stuff for you. Great. Policy and research. No, hold on. Resources. Okay, so under useful, where it says resources, and you go to digital resources and go to useful links.
Useful links.
And it's going to have the D study, which is the Stanford study there. And they've covered a study, and I don't know, you should be able to click on it, and you should be able to download yeah.
Yep, that works perfectly. Thank you.
So those are the ones we use. There's only been a few. And so, but yeah, well, there's been it depends on how you look at it, but those are the major ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
those are the two majors. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And like you mentioned, the bills that the GOP were passing about being against critical race theory and
Yeah.
teachings of certain topics such as racism, slavery, and being very censoring a lot of these topics. So, how do you think these bills will impact the push for implementing mass courses in our schools, in our public schools?
Wish I knew. The problem is that these bills are so vague that and the reason they're even passed is mainly because they're political. But there's no sort of punitive clause in there in these bills. Like there's no, like if you do go against it, there's nothing that says how you're going to be punished if you disobey this law. So the bills are written in a way where right now these classes, our classes are on the books. They exist. They're going to be taught. And so we asked like the state board members the same thing, and they're saying the same thing, that, you know, it's not going to change. They're not going to get rid of these courses. So these bills are vague, but they're mostly political. There's no way to enforce it. If you think about it, how are you going to enforce these things in every classroom in the state? That would cause a huge surveillance system that we don't have the money for. But at the same time, it does its job. It's basically a fear tactic. People are afraid that if they teach this stuff, they're going to get in trouble. But it works on this basically honor system, right? People have to report it, and then what? You get reported, and then what happens? There's nothing in the bill that has any sort of punitive, damages to this thing. There's no way you're going to get any sort of reprimand. I mean, there's just nothing in the bill to do that. So it's a crazy thing, and I wish we knew. There's a lot of the lawsuits against them right now. So your guess is as good as mine at this point. This is how it's going to affect it. Right now, it's doing its job as people are chilling, like a chill effect, right? That's about it.
So I guess you could say this bill would only, I guess, affect people who genuinely do subscribe to these political views. They'll actually start to censor what they teach and all that.
Yeah, pretty much, because I don't see any other option here.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty these bills are so hard to understand at this point, like how they're going to really implement this. It's just not in there.
Since there is a lot of support for, I guess, political support for bills like this, I guess my question is, how do we, get politicians who do support mass protective schools, like what's it called, to more into office? How do we get them elected? How do we push for them, for them to get positions in office?
That's a whole political move there. You're talking about you can get people like Cristina Morales and others who are already working on this. That's the same thing. The problem is that Texas is not a Republican state. It's not a red state. It's a non-voting state. So the problem is getting people out there to vote. Because right now you have a student population in Texas, which is 52% Latino. The voting bloc for, or basically, if you break down the demographics of the state, you have something like 35 to 40% Latino, right?
Yeah.
So, but most of those 35 to 40% do not vote. If they voted, you would have a lot more Democratic people in office. It's just the reality of the situation, which is why they're doing all these voters' rights bills and redistricting, because this last election, a lot of people turned out to vote. And a lot of people that's why it's swayed Democratic. And that is the problem with the way this works, is you want to get people reelected, you got to get people to vote. Usually it comes down to a lot of these local elections, these legislative elections are like 5,000 votes. That's it. So that is a thing. I mean, you look at someone like Willie Velasquez. This was his core issue. He was a Chicano activist whose core issue was registering people to vote. British and Latinos to vote. And that was his main thing. He did that, one of the major push toward the Raza Unida party at that time. It's still an issue. They just don't vote.
Yeah.
And so if you want to change things, you got to get people out to vote. And it has started to change because people are voting now, and that's why they're running scared. That's why they're trying to pass all these voter registration laws and everything, because they're trying to restrict people of color from voting. That's what's happening.
Yeah, especially in Texas, who's had, I guess, a
Yes.
history of, voter ID laws and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I looked into one of your short stories in The Road to Yolanda Park.
Yes.
And it was actually that story that was called The Road to Yolanda Park. And the character Rowena mentions that she and her kids watch certain parts of the show transparent, so it can help them understand more of who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And then her friend
Yes.
Hal then questions whether or not it's like okay for kids to be able to watch shows that involves mature topics, including sex. So since a lot of Mexican American history, especially here in Texas, is very traumatizing and very, I guess, harsh to things.
Yes.
What age do you think is the most appropriate for kids or students in Texas public schools to be able to learn these harsh topics?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, that's a question I can't really answer, but I think right about the puberty age.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at what, 12, 13?
Yeah.
Because that's when all those changes occur and things, and and that's usually what happens is because what you're talking about really is a religious thing. We're talking about Catholicism and the impact that has on the community, which is huge, right? Yeah. And that is a very repressive sexual attitude that they have. But if we actually look at it according to what we think about biological, and when bodies start to change and people start to come into sexuality, it's usually about those ages. 6th grade, right? It's when that should really start. But it's just not going to happen because of religious problems. And we have a lot of that religious exemption stuff, and that holds sway definitely within the Latino population, the religious aspect of it, which is why you get a lot of people who vote against their interests because of the abortion thing. Catholicism has been hugely opposed to abortion for a long time, and so they vote against that a lot. It's not that they're ever going to be a Republican. It's just that's what complicates things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the power that Catholicism holds on our community, I feel, is really intense.
Yes.
And finally, what would you say that this organization's most difficult challenge is, and how can people who are interested in this cause help? How can we contribute to this organization's cause?
Well, I mean, the biggest hurdle we have right now is obviously getting the word out to all the other districts out there that we do this, that we know to get teachers. Because right now we have somewhere around 40 districts in Texas, and there's literally hundreds of them that actually offer some sort of MOS course, right? Mm-hmm. So getting the word out means that other people, have to really, because once they look for us, they find us. It's not like we're hard to find. But to get the word out to these other areas, places like West Texas and others areas like Lubbock, who there are people out there, but they have to connect with us. They have to, and for us is the connecting, because this is all a volunteer basis. Nobody's getting paid to do this work.
Yeah.
So we have no funding, which would be a huge hurdle. And so in order to do that kind of outreach, you need to have funding to be able to reach out to everybody. And we're completely, grassroots organization. It's all volunteer based. And so for that, we would need to have some sort of funding to be able to operate like that. But we've been operating like this for years. And it's really been on the goodwill of everybody, and we've been able to affect quite a few in these districts. So yeah, that would be the next big move.
And is there anywhere, like, let's say that my classmates or future students that will watch this can donate or help? Like, is there a link or like a GoFundMe or something?
As of right now, no. We're still working on that. The Moss for Texas organization, we're trying to do a nonprofit thing, but because of COVID and everything got stopped. So as of right now, we usually do like private donations to oh my God, I can't remember the names right now. We have so many different organizations we deal with, but the one there in San Antonio, the organization, oh my, what are you guys there? Mas Unidos, yes. That's what we've been dealing with, and they've been kind of our financial arm for a lot of this. And so donate to a lot of those organizations like that, and it'll get trickled back to us for sure. There's also the Academic Watley in Austin. There's another nonprofit organization that you can donate to as well. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for being here and for agreeing to do this interview.
No problem. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Right.
Goodbye.
Bye.